Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We're here again with Novelists Unwind. I'm Johnnie Alexander. I'm really excited to be here today with a debut author, Natalie Walters, and she's going to talk to us about her new series. It's the Harbored Secret series, and just sounds very fascinating. So, Natalie, we just want to get right in and talk about your writing journey and a little bit about what led you to write this particular story or this series, and we'll talk about that too. But let's start off with, you're in Hawaii, right?
I am. It is bright and early. It's only 8 o'clock here in the morning.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I don't think I've ever had a guest from Hawaii before, so this is really very exciting. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
That's
we just
cool.
moved here. My husband's military, and this is actually where he's from. So
Wow.
we're ending, I hope we're ending our military career here, like not here, but like with his final stay, being able to come home and do his last assignment here.
Oh my gosh, that would be so cool. Wow. So you haven't lived there very long. Where are some other places you've lived?
We have lived in Kansas, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. We've lived in El Paso, Texas for a long time. We were in Fort Stewart, Georgia,
Wow.
Washington, D.C., and our most, extreme location was we were living in Cairo, Egypt for a couple of years.
Oh my gosh, that's fascinating. Wow.
Yeah, we really enjoyed that. We were there during their revolution, their uprising. So we had a very experience while we were there.
That is amazing. Will any of that ever come into any of your stories, do you think?
You know, I wrote my first manuscript ever while I was living in Egypt, and I pitched that, and I got a lot of good feedback, but I think the timing just wasn't right for it. So hopefully one day the characters or the story will come to life again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that would be really cool for that to happen. Wow, that's exciting. Okay,
Yeah.
well, you mentioned Georgia, and I know that from reading some of the material on your website and so on, that this the series that you're writing that we're talking about takes place in Georgia. Tell us a little bit about that, because you said something on there about the setting being so important to that story. You even switched it from Virginia to Georgia.
Yeah, I when I first started writing Living Lies, I was writing it character driven actually off of Lane, and I didn't really have the setting exactly pictured in my mind. Once we arrived in Georgia, I started to see the ethereal mystery of that setting. I mean, there's these
Mhm.
giant live oaks with these gnarly branches that stretch over, and there's Spanish moss that drips off, and it just leads itself to this sort of haunting atmosphere. And
Yeah.
and we were living in a small town of only 10,000 people. Walton is slightly bigger than that for fictional purposes, but it was easy to see how people uh, were hospitable, but there's also, the I guess how people could keep secrets because
Mhm.
things spread around so quickly and how that could be damaging. So, but I loved using the Georgia setting. It was beautiful, coastal Georgia, swampy and marshland,
Mhm.
just
It's
really
spooky.
perfect.
It's a little spooky. It is.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah, it really
That's so cool. So your story, another thing that's very interesting about it is that you've said in your materials that you have this background, your husband being in the military, and you have a lot of family in law enforcement. So you're able to just build on all of that as resources. And so how does, well, and one thing in particular, you said you had to get the police procedures right. So what are some things that you learned that maybe, we think we know from watching TV but aren't really true?
um,
Can you think of
I
anything
know,
like
right?
that?
You can't solve a crime in 30 minutes. What? I don't know.
Yeah. Doesn't happen.
The killer's just not right there. It's so weird. Yeah, no, I definitely had to get that right. I wanted to make sure. My biggest thing was the scene where the body is found is in marshland, and it's been there for a couple of days. and I needed to make sure that I got the protocol right for how an officer would approach that scene, how they would secure the scene, scene degradation, which is like when the scene starts to fall, when the area is kind of, it's nature and it's been raining, and so it's how do you secure that area so that you can preserve evidence if there is any. Of course, body decomposition. Had to make sure we got that correctly. But then I wanted to make sure that the protocol, because in this particular story, there are we're not only dealing with like the sheriff's department, we're also dealing with federal agencies, and I had to make sure that I could seamlessly put those together, how they would work together. And so I had not only information from my brother, who was a deputy at the time, and my father, who was a police officer at one time. I also had help from a friend of ours who's currently in the DEA, and so he was able to help me make sure that I put all those pieces together, so that not necessarily that those things could happen, like those things do happen, but that they could happen, and that's what we work with as writers, the probability of like, oh, that could actually happen. So.
Yeah, that's so cool though that you had, just all that right there in your family. Yeah, and I think as you said that you thanked people for letting you interrupt their dinner conversations with all your.
I have dear friends who are they live in Virginia, our DEA friends, and we'd be eating dinner, and something would pop up, and I'd be like, "So, do you think this could happen?" And then our conversation would turn to drugs and murder and cases, and I'm sure the people around us were very interested.
That's part of the fun of being a writer, though, is you get to talk about all these crazy things, and it's just fun.
Right, we don't get into too much trouble for it.
Yeah, right, because it's all fiction. Just
That's
pretend.
That's right.
Well, show us your postcard. So Natalie and I were talking ahead of time, and neither one of us have a copy of the book, but it is coming out really soon. And actually, yes, by the time this airs, it will be available on Amazon, so you can get a copy. So yeah, look at that, Living Lies.
Yeah, I love that. I think that I think the thing I love the most is that they were able to really use the setting, and the moss kind of comes down, and I love it. I think it's beautiful. I can't wait to hold it.
I know. I can't wait for you to either, because that's such an exciting moment. Okay, well, tell us a little bit about your heroine. Her name is, Lane Kent, and she goes back home, right, and gets involved in this murder. But you have something else about Lane that's you really are exploring with her, and her fragility and all. So can you talk to us about that?
So Lane Kent is, she suffers from depression, and readers will pick up on that from the very first chapter. They'll see the things that she struggles with. And when as I said before, I started writing this story as a character-driven story, and it was based on her. And while her story came to be, our family was personally struggling with the issues of depression and what that was like, and the stigma and the fears and the just trying to get through it and cope through it and understand it. And so writing her story became a little bit of therapy for me, because it was something that I started to write her character and her story arc as a way of speaking my love language to my own child as she was struggling through it. So while there are some I think reflective pieces in Lane to my daughter's journey, Lane's very very separate. It's still separate, but I really just wanted to I don't know, I feel like not expose, but just reveal the heart of somebody who's suffering through depression, as I saw through my daughter. And I hope that comes across in a very authentic and genuine way, because it truly is personal to our family. And I just have a heart and, for these people.
Yeah, that's difficult, because like you said, there is still such a stigma. And yet you talk about Lane. One quote I have down is, just kind of the cost of service and secrets is one of the things that you want to write about. and Lane has these secrets, and then she also is just dealing with these feelings of, can God really love me? There's got to be something wrong with me. So
right. Yeah, I think that one of the things that we looked at, and I think we faced from external perspectives was, well, there's got to be something you did wrong. There's got to be something that she did wrong, and I think that is a misconception. Just like somebody who is stricken with cancer, they didn't do anything wrong to get cancer, and we need to look at depression in the same manner, that somebody doesn't do it to get, doesn't do anything wrong to get depression, and that doesn't make them a mistake, that God made a mistake in them. God created them with purpose, and he could be using that depression to reach others. And I feel like for us, I've been able to see that testimony in my own child's life, how her depression and speaking about it has opened doors to other families who have come up to us and said, thank you for talking about it. Now we have opened up a conversation, and I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think Satan loves it when we try to keep things secret, and when we don't, they do become opportunities to glorify God and to minister to others, and then that actually then helps us. I mean, kind of whatever it might be, whatever the situation.
I absolutely agree. I think that is the enemy's biggest stronghold, is making us feel isolated and alone. And we really, by opening up and speaking about it, we're exposing those lies to light. And once the light comes in, then we can see the beauty in everything. So
yeah, that's wonderful. How's your daughter doing?
She's doing really good. She's we've been really successful with her health. She's got some other health situations going on, but we're taking care of that. But she's doing really, really well. Thank you.
Good. That's great. Okay, well, talking a little bit more about writing. So this is your debut novel, and the second one is in the series is already also on Amazon. It's available for pre-order. It's called Deceit. But you mentioned writing one manuscript that still, is kind of put away for now. So, and you've been published in Proverbs 31 magazine and Guidepost. So tell us a little bit, though, about your writing journey. I mean, how long has it taken you from like, oh, I want to be a writer, to this moment of signing that contract for Living Lies and Deadly Deceit and saying, yes, I'm here. I did it.
I go, yay! I think for me, like, if I looked at the time frame on like when I started even considering writing, it's 9 years.
Yeah.
Which I feel like I don't know, I feel like that might be short. I feel like that's a short amount of time.
It's pretty typical from the authors that I've interviewed on here. I mean, it's 10 years, 11 years, 8 years. I mean, you're right in there with a bunch of people.
I think when I first started writing, I read a book called For the Right Reason, and it was a compilation of stories by other Christian authors on why they decided to write. And I didn't realize at the time how many Christian fiction authors there were. I didn't even know that that genre existed. Side existed of publishing. And so I started looking into programs, and I found the Christian Writers Guild with Jerry Jenkins. He had a course, and I started that, and then eventually met Diane Mills, who mentored me, and love her. And she actually helped me with my first manuscript, and then continued to encourage me, to keep writing. And what I think happened with my first manuscript is I love thrillers. And I was like, I'm going to write a thriller because that's what I love. And I wrote it, and then they're like, you need to add some romance. And I was like, romance. So I got a book on how to write romance and watched all the Hallmark movies I could, and kind of figured out the method for that, and decided, okay, I'm going to start trying. So I wrote Living Lies, and I was like, okay, well, how can I write this romance for her, because she's going through all this stuff. So that was hard. And then I went to a conference and started pitching the story, and I got good feedback. And the thing I learned was you really need an agent. So I kind of stopped pitching to editors. I mean, I still did, but I focused primarily on agents, and went to a it was like a workshop where the Just the Agents panel was, and I met my agent and spoke to her, and she took my manuscript, and about, oh gosh, that would have been like in September, and then I didn't hear anything, and so I was like, well, I don't know, I guess I'm just gonna write a Hallmark type story, because then I really like, oh, I was like, I like romance. So I was like, oh, forget the suspense. So started working on that, was on a writing retreat with my critique partner, and got an email message from my agent, or she wasn't my agent at the time, but got an email from her, and she said, I'm interested, I want to sign, and so we want to do Living Lies, and so I signed with her, and then about a year later, I had a contract for the 3 books. So
oh, great! So there will be 3 in the series.
3 series, yeah.
Great. That's wonderful. That's, yeah. I mean, it's long. I mean, even like you said, you got your agent, and I think we have the same agent, Tamala. Yes, we do. Tamala Hancock Murray's my agent too. She's wonderful. So shout out to Tamala. Yeah, but then another year passes before you get the contract. It's like, we just spend so much energy and time, and it can just take forever.
Yeah, I feel like if I had known at the time I started that, okay, this is going to be a 10-year process, I might have felt defeated, but it hasn't felt like it's been that long. It feels like it's gone very quickly. And I feel like, so then sometimes I feel like, oh man, is this like did it happen too quickly? Like, what's going on? But it's good to hear that, no, this is average. And so then I feel like, all right, so I'm not,
I think it pretty much is, just from people I've talked to on here. I've had a couple people that, it's been really, really quick, but usually it seems like 8 to 12 years even. I mean, it can be a long, long time. But there's those milestones. I mean, you hit those different milestones along the way that just keep you encouraged, and you keep going, like, positive feedback from somebody, or signing with an agent, and you just keep at it, and eventually the day comes.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. So are you writing the 3rd book now, or?
My 3rd book is due tomorrow to the publisher. So I am on the final edits I've already written it, but I'm on the final edits through my critique partner, going through and just polishing it up as best as I can. So that'll go in tomorrow to my editor. And then I've also just received the galley edits for book 2. Yeah. And so those are due next week. And so I will be, as soon as I turn this one in, I'll be right back to the book 2's world, and we'll finish those edits and submit that. And then I will hopefully be able to breathe.
Yes. Yeah. But then the first one's coming out, so you're going to be doing some marketing for that. So yeah. This is part of the writer's life a lot of people might not understand, is so often you're like planning one, editing one, or writing one, launching one, and all of those things can come together. And so your head is in, like, several different places, several different stories all at the same time, and it can be
overwhelming.
Yes, that's exactly the word.
Yes. I actually just sent a friend of mine a text message this morning, and I was like, getting ready to do an interview, and I'm getting over a cold, and I said, and all these things are happening, and I said, and I'm feeling overwhelmed. Please pray for me. So good to have those people in your life to pray over.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That support system. All right. Well, just one more thing, especially, I love this, that you talked about. I guess this is almost like your little tagline, or your tagline on your website. You say, life rooted in purpose is a story worth telling. And I just love, I'm going to say it one more time to make sure people got it. Life rooted in purpose is a story worth telling. How did you come up with that, and what's behind that as the theme of you, the theme of Natalie?
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. For me, I think for a long time, I've struggled personally with trying to understand, like, what my purpose is. And I don't know if it feels like that's something universal amongst people, but again, for whatever reason, we don't talk about it, or we put this facade that we've got it all together. And I'll be the first to tell you that, like, I might look like I have together, but like
Yeah,
it, chaos behind me is, crazy. So just knowing, like, and with, military family and military, my purpose changes sometimes,
mhm.
move to move, or I've got older kids now. My youngest is an adult, he's 18. And so my purpose keeps shifting. Like, what do I do? And do I have any, anything to offer? And
Mhm.
um, I think when we root ourselves in the purpose that God has set before us, that we have a story that is worth telling to people. So my story can shift and change. My story of when my babies were little and I was raising them, or my story as a family as we're trying to support our daughter suffering through depression,
Mhm.
or as our family is going through, the joyous parts of our lives, how that
Mhm.
changes, and how we can encourage people. And I think for me, what I want is to be able to tell people and hope that they believe about themselves, that they have a purpose and their life story is worth something, and that I want them to believe that, and that, not to sell themselves short,
Right.
not anything, whatever the world is trying to tell them, that, that if they, as long as they're rooted in the Lord's purpose, then they've got a purpose. And I think,
Exactly. I love that. And I love the way you said that, because I think as women, we especially feel that, as our children, we don't have children and we have children, and we're so wrapped up in their lives and their growth. And I, like you said, I think I read this on your website too, that now this is the time for you to write. Like, you've always wanted to do it, but now you've got that freedom because the kids are older. And I think that happens with a lot of us too, that we have to kind of wait to fulfill that dream until the time is right. And often that's when the kids are out the door.
right, absolutely, absolutely. I think that is really important. And I think one of the things I've learned on this writing journey, is that not to box God in with
Right.
expectations, because I find that, I mean, the writing industry is a business first and foremost, and we have to
Absolutely.
remember that. But it doesn't have to be competitive. And I
No.
think sometimes we get caught up in, not just in business life, but in personal life, to be competitive with what people are doing out on the outside, what we see on social media. And I think when we look at life that way, we box God's ability in. And I think when we release that, if God wants all of us to be published authors, it just takes the snap of his fingers to make that.
Right.
So by removing the fear that, oh, I might never get published, or I might not ever be able to experience this or do this, or that, we allow God to really work in our lives in ways that we would never even have imagined. And it most often is better than what we imagined.
I
So
think that's absolutely true. Absolutely. Well, I am so looking forward to reading your book. Can't wait to get a copy again. It just seems like you've got so many different things woven into it, and with the body in the marsh, and the depression, and the secrets, and the small town, and
yeah,
the Spanish moss. Because I love that Savannah. You go to Savannah and you see all that. It's really cool.
yeah.
So thank you so much. And just one last question: when you get all done, like you're almost done with this story and you're going to be sending it off tomorrow, what do you do to unwind?
Oh goodness, I haven't had actual.
I
We're like
know.
with each book that's turned in, there's been another book that I need to turn around and start doing. So
Yeah.
I'm actually looking forward to, when I turn. I think it'll be next week when I turn in the galleys for book 2.
Mhm.
I am looking forward, I think, to just like sleeping. I mean, I don't know, maybe just relaxing with I know my family's excited for me to come out of my cave and
Yes.
participate in life. So we've got a lot of family events coming up. I've got a new niece or nephew going to be born pretty soon, and
Oh,
my daughter's married. So there's a lot of family events that are coming up, and I kind of feel like that's my reward, to be able to fully invest in those moments with them. So I'm looking forward to that a great deal.
yeah. That's wonderful that you've got those writing tasks all completed before you take off
Yes.
on those things. Yeah, that's wonderful. That's great. Well, Natalie, thank you so much. You've This has been so much fun, especially
Thank you
talking to you
so much
from
for having me.
Oklahoma to Hawaii. How about that?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Technology is amazing.
It is. It's so cool. And to everybody who's watching, we thank you for that. We hope you'll get a copy of Natalie's book, Living Lies, put out by Revell. It should be out by the time you see this recording. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you next time on Novelists Unwind. Bye-bye.